I stood calmly in the morning sun waiting for my colleague to finish whatever it was he was doing, standing atop a concrete slab under a tarp of some kind, fiddling with some kind of clearly mechanical device. My students, 5 of the best in my class, stood behind me in perfect attention to what was going on. 4 cat girls and a fox girl all stood quiet and calm as they waited patiently for instructions, tails nervously flicking about and ears twitching and moving to detect any potential noise. I looked around and saw a most interesting sight. An elven matron, one of the elder women, wearing a human police uniform, standing to the side at a table with some human guns arrayed atop it. It wasn't abnormal to see my fellow elven kin embracing human culture, but even for a situation like this, it was abnormal. The woman flirtatiously threw me a grin, and I nodded in response with a smile as I waited for whatever this was. Right then, I finally heard that heavy Mexican accent say, "Hola, compadres. Today's going to be a fun day," he said as he finally approached. "Mr. Martino, may I ask what exactly we are doing outside of school, inside of school hours?" I asked. "Take a chill pill, hombre. This is for their sake, not yours." He snapped at me and walked towards the girls. "Hey, ladies, welcome to your senior firearms safety training course," he said. The girls' ears perked up and they stood to attention. Such good students. In accordance with school tradition and government mandate, you, the top 5 students in the school, will get the time to learn proper firearms safety training. Today we are joined by the local police chief, Matron Andreas, who will be conducting the course. Because you all have such a good academic performance, you will get the chance to play with my personal collection today, he gleefully said. The girls seemed apprehensive but excited as Matron Andreas approached them. "We will have a little shooting contest after you pass your safety training course, and the winner gets this," he said and picked up a nearby pink gun case. He opened it and showed them what was in it. "This is a FN-57 pistol. Well, it's a replica of one actually, it's not a real gun. But it will have your name inscribed on it and put in the school trophy case for all to see. Everyone will get their extra credit, of course, but only one will get the glory." The girl suddenly perked up and went all giddy at the mention of extra credit. "But in the meantime, while you are doing that," he said and gave a strange glance at me, "I have a little score to settle with your maestro." He returned to the platform he was working on and grabbed the tarp, removing it. 2 of the largest, nastiest-looking guns I had ever seen were perched atop it, both of which looked like they had been bolted to the ground by the bipod. I was not ignorant. I knew what these things were, but I hadn't seen these big ones up close. The girls, especially the conservative-leaning cat girl Maria, squealed at the sight of the things, unsure of what to make of them. "Maestro Talavi, have you passed your firearms safety course yet?" he asked. "Of course. I wouldn't be a teacher without one," I replied. "Then I don't need to do much except show you how it works. Please your pick first, compadre," he said with a grin and gestured to go. I chose the one on the right side and sat next to it, waiting. This one, I guess. Okay. This beautiful beast is the Barrett M89B, or the Bravo model, chambered for 338 Lapua Magnum, which is the NATO version of the 50 cal. These things pack a hell of a punch, so I bolted them down on a gimbal mount. "Let me show you how to do it," he said and got on his gun. He moved up to it and lay flat on his belly, choosing a right-handed posture. He showed me how to lay down in a comfy position and made sure to keep me straight and level. I noticed the gun wasn't loaded or ready to fire either, standard procedure. Neither had a scope mounted on it. I lifted the hefty beast in my hands, positioning my elbow and moving the stock to my shoulder. It took a bit to adjust to the odd posture, body tilted slightly to the side. Okay, you get it? Body always tilted slightly to the side. Let your stomach expand so it's easier to breathe. Easy to breathe, better to aim. Let me show you how to load and fire. I got a bunk casing here, he said and positioned himself. Bunk casing? I've never heard that before, I replied. It's a standard shell with a plastic tip that disintegrates as it leaves the barrel. The shell itself is a miniature pneumatic piston that is made to fire at just the right amount of power to make the gun work properly, without it actually firing a projectile or making noise. It's usually used for demonstrations in packed urban areas or testing mechanisms when you need to be quiet or can't use real ammo for obvious reasons. In short, it's a fake bullet that fires like a real bullet, he said. He loaded a magazine up with the round, that distinct spring-loaded click noise making my spine tingle. He lifted the gun up, slid the magazine in the slot and locked it in place. He pushed the bolt forward, then locked down. It was loaded. Test fire, he yelled out, then pulled the trigger. The gun fired. A bit of recoil forced the barrel back. It was little more than the pop of a firecracker, and it didn't seem to break anyone's stride. Okay, reach. Bolt up, pull back, eject shell, bolt back down. You got that? He asked. I nodded silently and repeated his actions on my rifle. I think so. Okay, fantastic. Now we get to the hard part. Gotta calibrate your sights, he said. He got up and retrieved 2 scopes from a nearby case and handed me the smaller, fatter-looking one. You got them L-Fis, yeah? That's why you get the 2X ACOG and I get the 12X SUSAT. We gotta calibrate them and set them so we are on the same level. Gotta make it fair, right? He said with a strange grin. Yeah, good point, I said. He slotted the sight onto the top-mounted rail on my gun and helped me set and range it. He was correct, my eyesight was far greater than his and it took us a bit of time to properly calibrate the scopes. There, that last target downrange, top of the hill. Can you read the writing on it? He asked. No, I can't. It's blurry for me, I replied. Then we got about the same. It's blurry for me too. Okay, give me a minute, let me go get the ammo. He said and left for the nearby table. I took the chance to look over where the girls were. Each one had a set of specially designed headphones atop her head covering her ears. They were engrossed in their lesson, the officer showing them how to hold a pistol properly. He returned in earnest with 10 magazines for each of us, gently setting them down. He got settled into his spot and loaded a mag, as did I. So you hear what happened at Lorelei High School last month? I asked. Oh yeah. Professor of the history class took his kids on a field trip in a tank, right? He said as he readied his gun to fire. Yup. Now the whole school goes on field trips. The GPA in the area skyrocketed when the kids learned they needed higher grades in order to participate. It's like a fire of discovery was lit under them, I said, racking a shell. Yeah, you give people incentive to excel, they do. Funny, huh? Target is 800 feet due north. Wind south by southwest at 5 miles per hour. Gravity at 9.8. Elevation from firing point at 183 feet. See that? 12 of them. He said. What, are those the discarded urns from the pottery class? I yelled in surprise at the sight of 3 shelves in a line, each one packed with pottery. Hey man, I did say they wouldn't go to waste. Huh! He laughed with sarcastic glee and aimed down sights. First round don't count. Use it to range your gun first. Then we shoot for real. Okay. I waited for a moment or two, then gently squeezed the trigger. I was not expecting the recoil, the boom, or that incredible feeling of the huge gun going off. My shoulder wrenched itself back, the recoil stopping short only because the base of the bipod had been bolted to the floor. I had inadvertently taken a deep, shock-fueled breath and gasped my surprise as to just how much power was in this thing. The gun going off had my girls reaching to cover their ears and squeaking in surprise at the sound. My gunfire was closely followed by his. I was able to collect my thoughts long enough to see my shell falling short by about 10 feet from the target, whereas he missed by about 4 feet, firing too high. He reached up and twiddled a knob on the scope, then racked another shell. I was not to be outdone here, so I steeled myself and racked a shell too. Just then I heard a very distant crack of thunder, followed by the third shelf suddenly having one of its pots explode into a ball of dust. I looked behind me, and despite the distance, nearly a mile off, I could see another man with a heavy rifle peering from a small clearing from atop the hill. I heard a noise from a radio. Bingo. 100. You're shot, boys. Crazy bastard insisted he show up. He wanted some practice, and I had spare urns, so... Yeah, that's Jerry, Martino said with a chuckle. The art teacher is doing that. He's 2 miles from the target. I yelled in shock. And with that gun of his, he can hit anything within 10 miles. We're lucky he's not showing off today. He's just here for fun, though. This is between you and me, compadre, he said and gently squeezed the trigger. This time his shell was true and blasted through the air with force. One of the pots, a blue one with a broken pattern, exploded with force into a plume of blue smoke. Not to be undone, I fired my own, and even though it was a glancing blow, the sheer force of the bullet hitting the target caused the pot to explode in a plume of purple smoke. 2-1-1, good shooting, boys. 11 remains, 2 out of 15. Came the crazy art teacher's voice over the radio again. So did you hear about Marigold High School too? That one in South Dakota, I said. Oh yes. Teacher took his students to a firing range with an anti-tank gun. He did everything properly and even got the principal involved as he taught a few elves how to play with a cannon. Jerry said from the radio. Bastards put him on admin leave without pay for 2 weeks because he brought them on an unauthorized field trip. The whole school protested to bring him back. They wanted to fire him, but the students and faculty said no. I said, Puta! We all said in unison and then loosed another volley of bullets. Martino missed his target by 2 inches as the wind shifted. Jerry hit his target center on, causing another pot to explode in a green puff of smoke. My shell missed my intended target due to the wind shift, but hit another instead, resulting in a puff of blue smoke. 3-1-2. Lucky shot, I said as I ejected a shell. By this point, the lesson for the girls had come to a temporary stop, each of them and their warden mesmerized by the display of 3 men at abnormal ranges taking shots at an array of pottery. What about the Teachers Coalition at Wendelton University? They used one of those powered mech suits, didn't they? Martino said as he racked a shell. Oh yeah, I remember that one. Guy was teaching an engineering class and brought out a small construction mech for demonstration purposes. Poor bastard didn't see the cheese cannon coming, Jerry said. We all had a hearty laugh at the thought of engineering students refitting a construction mech to fire a pneumatic cheese cannon at their teacher as a prank. He gave them all a passing grade, of course, after getting the cheese cleaned up. I squeezed the trigger and let loose my fourth bullet, this time missing completely. Martino's bullet hit center on and resulted in a puff of pink smoke, while Jerry's round turned the smaller pot on the shelf into a puff of dust. 4-2-2. Unlucky. Come on, guys, I know you're better than this, Jerry said. I heard a soft whisper from behind me as the girls were giggling among each other. Apparently, even Jerry could hear it as we all stopped what we were doing, glared at them and yelled, "No gambling on school time, young lady," at the same time at the girls who were attempting to place bets on us. The girls all squealed and went back to attention, hastily returning to their lesson while their warden, Matron Andreas, laughed her way back to her post to resume lessons. Jerry let loose a bullet and a sudden heavy gust of wind threw the shell off course. The shell blasted through the air and hit a tree. The tree's trunk exploded, the heavy bark shattering with force, and the tree itself toppled, landing on Jerry's target with a thunderous crackle of broken ceramics and a puff of multicolored smoke. Well, I guess that's it for me then, Jerry said through the radio with a laugh. All right, I'll be with you guys in about 5. What the hell kind of weapon does that? I asked. A 408 Chatak 85-volt Gauss-assisted rifle, that's what. Jerry was in the army before he came here. Martino replied as he racked his 5th shell. I readied mine, the new revelation throwing me off as I missed my next shot, and Martino scored a perfect hit on his with a bright puff of yellow smoke. 3-2. 1 mag out. 2 mags left, Martino replied. I am starting to realize how humanity managed to accomplish so much with these things, I said as I loaded a magazine. I often wonder why you were so quick to invite us in when you had so much power. Best way to get rid of an enemy is to make him a friend, Jerry said as he appeared behind us. Fair point, I replied and racked a shell. Wind 4.8 miles south-southwest. Gusts of 15 to 22 miles northeast, Jerry said. I looked up at him and glared like I knew what that was. Oh, right, sorry. Wind is soft from the right side, but gusts every now and then from the top left side. Check your radial compass in the scope, he replied. I followed direction and squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew through the air and a puff of purple smoke signified a good hit, followed by Martino releasing his shot and getting a red puff in response. We loosed 9 more shells in quick succession, trapped in a haze of gunfire as we became more competitive. I had become so focused I had lost track of my students, who by now had completed their certifications and were calmly watching the spectacle unfold. I had missed my last shot, leaving 2 pots untouched, whereas Martino had destroyed all of his. We shook hands like gentlemen, dusted ourselves off, and I magnanimously permitted Martino to enjoy a victory lap. Jerry and Martino then organized their guns and packed the Barretts away for now to be cleaned later. Martino brought out 5 strange wooden rifles and handed one to each girl. Ladies, this gun is called the K98, a rifle used by a faction in Europe during various conflicts over 300 years old and still in service. It's reliable, strong, powerful, and you lot will be using it for a little competition. Winner take all. Come now to the dugout, he said with glee. Each girl followed, carrying her rifle the way she was supposed to. Stock down, barrel up, hands away from the trigger. They learned well. They went into a nearby bush-covered dugout by a small range nearby. There in the distance were 5 poles. On top of each was a coin facing us. Right, this is how it works. Use the knowledge you have learned, not only from your firearms certification, but also from watching us have our little contest. You have 5 rounds in your rifle and 5 chances to shoot the coin. The one who gets the coin wins. Clear, Jerry said. Yes, sir, they all responded. Such good students. Each girl had to adopt her own stance, and poor Deborah the fox girl had to be helped up onto a box because she was so short. They aimed and Martino held up a sword. He swung the sword down and yelled, "Fire!" The girls let loose a volley of fire, and poor Amari, one of the wood elves, nearly stumbled due to the recoil. She obviously wasn't expecting it. Once they all got used to the higher caliber of weapon, they readied for a second volley. Martino counted down, swung his sword, and they loosed a volley of fire again. I could see they were all close, very close, but not quite. They loaded, readied, and aimed. Martino swung the blade down one more time, and each girl fired in unison. All 5 coins blew off their poles at the same time. Each girl stood flabbergasted, jaw open and eyes wide at the miracle they just witnessed. Well, shit. Looks like we're going to have to get 4 more of those medals for the trophy case, I said. The girls collected themselves and hugged each other in celebration, Jerry and Martino taking the time to collect their rifles before anything silly happened. While Martino and Jerry took the time to clean up, I checked the time and made haste to usher the girls back to school before the final bell. 2 days later, I passed by the trophy case. There, in that shielded shelf, were 5 medals, a tiny gun in its own little fancy case with each girl's name engraved on a different one.